Good morning, everybody. We've got Grant Kemp here from creativecashflow.com, and we're going to be discussing key phrases that can help you out in your negotiation. So, like, if you've ever spent time on the phone at all, I'm sure that every once in a while we've said something that we're like, oh man, I should not have said that. That really just messed things up. And at the exact same flip side of that, we've always said the things that are like, wow, I'm glad I said that. That really built some rapport. That really helped the negotiations along. Well, after you've spent some time on the phone, you'll find, and if you get to a point where you remember those little key phrases that helped you out, you can start using those at will. And you know what? Those are some of the things we're going to be talking about on today's show with Grant Kemp. Grant, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on here. I'm happy to do this. Negotiating is like my favorite thing to talk about. We did a negotiations webinar for the NTARA last night. It's one of the things that reminded me of just, some of these things that we can do. And so the idea today is we just want to shotgun blast like these ideas to you that are going to be the difference between converting a deal and not converting a deal. And the thing is that guys, high performers, high converters, understand that every little thing matters. Enough little things added up mean you get to a yes, right? So some of these are going to be minor, some of these are going to be major. So Daniel and I have both, and any large converter, high performer that you know is going to have their little things that they know that they can go back to and get a yes with. So that's what we're going to jump into today. Is we want to give you a bunch of these tools to use on their first call, to use on your appointment, all that kind of stuff to make sure that you can get to that yes. Because hey, would you rather have 5 leads and 5 closings, or would you rather have 200 leads and 2 closings? Well, the difference is, are you a good negotiator? A good negotiator gets to yes. And I would rather have 5 phone calls and 5 closings, right? So that's what we're going to be working on today here. So Daniel, do you have any, to start off with, do you have any that you have off the top of your mind that's just been like, dude, this has been a killer for me over the years? Do you have anything like that, or you want me to get started on some of mine?
One of the ones that I wasn't 1,000% prepared for this presentation today, but one of the key ones that I've used repeatedly over time is when I'm getting close to wrapping up a conversation with the seller, and if I'm unable to get the contract signed right then and there, I am well aware that the seller is likely going to be shopping it around. They're trying to think it through, trying to call people back. So I'm knowing that, I'm preparing myself for that. And one of the things that I've always said whenever I'm getting done with it is like, hey, I feel like we've had a really good conversation here. I really want to do business with you. And one of the key things I'll say is, you know what? Let me earn your business. One of the things that I have found is that, whenever I'm looking at your property, if you noticed, I didn't have a general contractor walking through here. What I did, though, is I took a fairly good estimate from my experience as to what this is going to cost me. Let's just say I say this is going to cost me $30,000 to fix. And I say that this house all fixed up is worth $190. All right, so I offered you $105. Well, if you've got another investor that comes through here and they think that the repairs were going to be $29, that's just $1,000 less than what I thought it was going to be. And if they thought the house was going to be worth $191, well, guess what? They might be able to offer $2,000 more than what I offered. And while I don't want to lose your business over $2,000, I feel like the two of us have done a really good job together. I believe that I can work with you. I hope that you trust me to be able to get this deal done for you. And I want you to give me an opportunity. If somebody comes in and they're offering like $1,000 more for me, don't let me lose the opportunity to earn your business over $1,000. Give me a second shot. And that has gotten me a ton of deals. I just really try to just open it up and let them know that, like, hey, I may have miscalculated the repairs by $1,000 or the ARV by $1,000. Don't let us lose doing business with each other over a couple $1,000.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And one of the things that I will add on to that, because I've used that one too. And here's the kind of cool thing is that what you'll find is like Daniel buys houses completely differently than I do. I buy the houses completely differently than Ronnie does, but all 3 of us have massive conversion rates. I convert over 85% of the conversations that I have. And I only have conversations with qualified leads. I think that's a conversation for another day. Like, I'm not picking up the phone for the take me off of your list, you stupid, how'd you get my number kind of call. But if it's a qualified lead, I convert 85+%, as do some of these other guys like I'm mentioning here. And we're all going to have similar things that overlap. We're going to have phrases that overlap. And it's funny when you start talking to other high performers, you're like, oh, I use that same thing. This is how I do it, right? And so this is what we want to give you. We want to put this in front of you so that you are getting the tools that you may be able to overlap with. So I do that same exact thing. And I'll tell you the place where I find the most success in that is particularly when you are dealing with somebody of the greatest generation, right? When you are dealing with somebody who's a little bit older, maybe you're working the high equity leads list or something like that. If you have properly built rapport, which is absolutely should be a number one priority of yours, one of the things that you have the right, whatever, the relationship to then request is if they're not ready to make a move yet, I'll say that same sort of thing, but without the intro piece. But I'll say, hey, just make me this promise. Will you promise me that before you accept anybody's offer, even if somebody else comes back to you that you're considering, before you accept that offer, that you'll come and you'll talk to me about it first, right? And with unfailing certainty, it works because the people of the greatest generation, again, are very my word is my bond kind of based. And that is something that we have kind of lost over time, but it can help in these conversations. So I love how you introduced that. Another piece, and again, guys, we're just going to shotgun through these things. So I suggest get a pen and paper out or your Google Docs or whatever. We do want questions. We appreciate you guys being here. But this one's going to be just a freaking fire hose. You'll probably be hitting replay on this one. So just moving into another one of my favorite phrases to use, and you can literally just script this one out for yourself, is, do you have any immediate and pressing cash financial needs, like a broken down car or a medical bill that needs to get paid off, something like that? Okay, that is the exact phrasing that I'm using every time. That is a script. Do you have any immediate and pressing cash financial needs, like a broken down car or a medical bill that needs to get paid off, something like that? Because what it's doing is, if you say this, and by the way, where you say this matters, you need to say a couple of these things that we're going to give you before the rest of your discovery process occurs, because saying a question like that after they have already told you some of the things they're dealing with can be insensitive and show that you weren't listening to them, right? So this needs to be part of your very, very first initial discovery, kind of while you're talking to them. Hey, why are you looking to sell? What do you owe on your house? Blah, 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 blah. In that very first discovery process, you're going to say, do you have any immediate and pressing cash financial needs, like a broken down car or a medical bill that needs to get paid off, something like that? Because you're saying your problem must be this tall in order for you to tell me that you need cash for it. And on top of that, the great thing on it is that if they say, most of the time, their answer will be something along the lines of, yeah, I do have this thing that ultimately is going to cost $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. Oftentimes they will give you the answer, well, I need $10,000 in cash. And you're like, okay, well, why do you need $10,000? Well, I need $10,000 to move. So your response to that will be, all right, well, let's work through that. All right. So this house that you've got right now has been stressing you financially. The payment on this house is $1,000 a month. So obviously you're not going to want to move into something where the payment is still $1,000. You're going to want to save a little bit. So maybe let's say it's an $850 house. Let's round up to $900. You're just saving $100 a month on it, right? But it's something. So you go into a $900 rental. What do you need to move into that? It's going to be what? The first month's rent, last month's rent, first month's rent and deposit, something like that. So you're looking at $1,800 that you'll need to get into a new place. So let's round that to $2,000 just for grins. So now you've got your next rental. You're ready to go. What else do you need as far as moving? I can get you a mover for $800 to $1,000 to move a house this big, which I, as a side note to you guys, would recommend. Kind of have some movers in your back pocket that you've talked to before that you can say are, that are trustworthy or whatever, and then make sure that if you do make that connection, that you're being super duper clear with your seller. Look, I've got no affiliation. These are just some guys that I've heard of or that I've used or whatever. They don't represent how I do business. I don't represent how they do business. I'm just taking the place of Google for you and trying to connect some dots, right? Because you don't want them to get messed over by this moving company or whatever if you hired them and then apply that to you. But it's like, you can get a house like this moved for $1,000. So now we're up to $3,000. Where's the other $7,000 going? And have them have to think about where they actually need that money. And 9 times out of 10, you're showing them that they don't need $10,000. And then you can be the good guy. Like, look, you only need $3,000 to get movers and to get into a new rental. I'll even throw you another couple $1,000 just so you've got some money in the bank. Go get a nice dinner or whatever. But now you've taken your money from 10 down to 5. And they have just told you that, hey, the translation to I don't need all of this in cash translates to I'm willing to take my equity in installments. If they did not tell you their immediate and pressing cash financial need was the amount of what that house is worth, that means that it's on the table for you to give them an owner financed offer for their equity. So I really like that train of thought. I really like introducing that idea from the beginning. Daniel, have you used something similar to that ever?
Yeah, I most certainly have, and I believe it was because you trained me on how to do it. I mean, 100% honesty on most of my creative strategies. I mimicked a lot of what you taught me whenever we first met each other. So yeah, I've most certainly used that. There's several others that I personally like, but I know that you've got a list of yours over there.
Well, go for it. We can trade back and forth. That's cool if you want to trade.
I know that
Kind of
one
hit
that,
them one.
sorry about that. One that I'd used quite a bit, and I used it for a long time because I loved it until I used it on the wrong person, and I quickly realized how fast it could backfire. But whenever this works really good for a heart person. So if you've never heard Grant Kemp teach on head, heart, gut, I find this to work very good with a heart person, sometimes a gut person, but definitely don't use this on the head person. And what do I mean by that, Grant? Can you fill people in on what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, I can. Absolutely. So head, heart, and gut are the decision centers that everybody has when making a decision. And that has been one of the biggest realizations and biggest helps I can give to people in negotiating is that you have to decide this person that you're talking to, do they make decisions with their head, their heart, or their gut? The head people need all the details. They need all the numbers that you can possibly give them. Heart people are emotional decision makers. They need to visualize what working with you looks like, visualize what the future is going to be, and they make emotional decisions. They're typically going to feel that the house is an animate object, that kind of stuff. And then gut people just kind of reach that Leroy Jenkins moment. They just kind of hit it and they're like, let's do this. I'm ready to go. I have enough. So what you need to do, and actually I think that this is a massive, massive, massive give in negotiating. You need to know who you are. You need to know how you make decisions, okay? So think about this. If I might just kind of introduce you guys to why, how to figure this out. When you bought your last car, did you spend 3 weeks looking up the, average cost of life on this car versus that car and the miles per gallon on this car versus that car and blah, 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 all these numbers, finding what the interest rate was going to be? You found a dealer that had something for the price you wanted and then you just drove and bought it? Or did you, that would be a head person. A heart person is going to have one of two options happen. Either you loved your last car and you did not want to have to give it up. And it really kind of hurt to trade it in because that was your baby and she had been with you for however long or whatever. And it kind of hurt to trade it in, but you knew it was time to get a new car. So you did. Or you stinking hated your last car and you were so ready to get done with that thing and just get a new car and you just couldn't wait, right? And then you had to test drive it. And the car you ultimately ended up buying was the car that while you were driving felt right. You felt like your butt sit in that seat just right. And it just felt like so you bought the car. A gut person, you probably were driving around one day, you got a good paycheck in and you're like, you know what? I've got some money in the bank. I want a new car. I think those trucks are bad as hell. Let's go do this, right? And you pulled in and maybe you spent a couple of weeks on it, but ultimately you made your decision when you found that vehicle and you just really liked the sales guy you were working with. They just kind of struck you as a friend. And you're like, all right, man, let's do this. What is it? Let's do this. Let's go, right? Everybody has a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary decision center. Everybody's going to have a gatekeeper to their actual decision centers. Mine is head and gut. I'm basically heartless. So I need a bunch of numbers. And when I have a bunch of numbers, it passes my gatekeeper. And then my gut gets to tell me, yeah, I feel good about this. Let's do it, right? Or the numbers make sense. I just don't feel right about it. Let's not do that, right? I can make a quick decision as long as I've got a few numbers in my head. Daniel is one of the very rare folks that is pretty evenly balanced between head, heart, and gut. He makes decisions because he wants to do right by people, but he's got to have every number lined up. But there's going to be those times that he's just like, let's do this thing, right? So think about who you are because you are going to default to a negotiating pattern that makes sense to you. If you're a head person, you're going to default to wanting to give people numbers. But you got to understand there's a 66% chance you're wrong. They might be a heart or a gut person. You need to speak their language. So he's talking about speaking a heart or a gut language to a heart or a gut person with this particular pitch. If you mismatch, if you give a heart pitch to a head person, that is the sleazy car salesman. All right. So what's the pitch, Daniel?
So I appreciate you bringing that in because it is important with this pitch because I used to use this pitch hands down on every single person I talked to, and then whenever I finally did it to a really solid head person, I am talking about like I was getting pushed out the front door slammed on me kind of thing. Because I mean, like a solid head person does not accept this at all. But when you've got a good rapport going with a heart person, or even so much a gut person, here's what I would do. And we're talking about offering up a price. Most people, especially when we're getting started, we get nervous about throwing out that number because we're all told, you know what, you need to drop a really low number out there, and that's where you're going to start your negotiations from. So we've learned that when we do that, though, sometimes we get the seller to kick back, and you know what, it doesn't work out very well for us. So I started trying to figure out a way to propose a number in such a way that we could start the negotiations out extremely low, but not piss the person off. So what was I doing? So what I was doing with these people is earlier on in the conversation, once I've got a solid rapport built, you know, I've got people smiling, things are feeling a little more comfortable, I'll throw out something, and I just throw it out there fast, and I'll throw it out there like this, and I was like, hey, what if I was to throw out a number and say, like, and let me give you a little bit of context to this beforehand so it makes sense. Let's say the home is worth $100,000 as is in its present condition. Like, without a doubt, home's worth $100,000, and that gives you a little bit of understanding as to where I'm negotiating from. So how I'll do this is I'll approach the seller and I'll be like, hey, would you be willing to sell this property to me today and like get this thing wrapped up and done if I can come in and give you $200,000 for the house right now? And I'll just shut up. I said $200,000. $200,000 being double what the house is worth. Everybody knows it's worth, you know, double. I'm offering double what the house is worth. And what I do with that is it tends to diffuse, in my opinion, some of the thought processes that the seller has. When you're talking to the seller's initial thoughts are, we're going to be going into this long, drawn-out battle of price, and they're trying to prepare for it. You know, they're thinking they've watched Pawn Stars before, and they've seen these guys, these professionals going back and forth on price, and they're prepared for this battle. Well, whenever I sit down with them, and the very first thing I say, and I say it with a straight face, and I'm like, what if I gave you $200,000? Would you be able to get this property closed and sold out today? And they'll normally pause on that for a second. And I don't say anything. And they'll come back and, well, of course I would. Give me the contract. I'll sign that right now. And I'll look at them, I'll kind of smile. And I was like, well, that would make perfect sense for you. And I understand why it would. I mean, you're getting about double what the house is worth right there. But it's got to make sense to me as well. And my wife, I can promise you, while I would appreciate being able to buy the house from you, my wife would likely have me divorced before the end of the day because I would likely lose a massive amount of money on this house. But on the exact same flip side to that, you're not going to sell me the house for $1,000 because that wouldn't be a wise business decision for you either. Selling the house for $1,000 would be great for me. I'd make a ton of money, but I am here to make money. I have to make money on it, and $1,000 absolutely wouldn't make sense to you. I'm telling you right now, $200,000 would get me a divorce. What if I, came in at like $10,000? You'd likely slap me in the face, but if I said 15 or 20, what would your reaction be? And I say it jokingly. I say it very jokingly. I threw out a $15,000, $20,000 number, and the house is obviously worth $100,000, but I want to start my negotiations out as low as I possibly can because I really don't know what the motivations of that seller are. That seller might just be like, okay, fine, take it, go. I have had some sellers that are so emotionally disconnected from the property that they just want it gone. And what I'll do is I'll just throw it out there like that, and I'll just shut my mouth after I say, 15, 20 grand. And then boom, they're like, well, I could never take that little. And although I know they wouldn't take that little, it was a jokingly way of saying something so little that oftentimes what the exact response I'd get from the seller would be, I couldn't take less than 76. That's what I owe for it. Boom. Well, I just found out where we're starting our negotiations out at, and the sellers never want to be the first one to drop a number. So I'm able to drop two numbers. I dropped a number that was significantly higher than their asking price of the house. And then I dropped a number so ridiculously low that nobody would have ever accepted it, but I dropped it in such a way that I didn't get slapped saying it. So that is one that I really personally like to do, and I do it often. I'd say practice that. That one's done me very well in the past.
That's cool, man. I like that. I like that setup. It's funny. It's totally different than something that I would have approched, but it's
Don't do that on a head guy.
Right.
Don't do that on a head guy.
Yeah, and that's really the key thing here, right? Is that you've got to understand that if you give a head pitch to a heart person, you know what? Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to look up a slide because that's going to help you guys here in a little bit. But I'm gonna do that on next time Daniel's giving you his next pitch. So here's another one that I really like when we're talking about heart people. Okay, and for all you head people, I would actually like for you to comment. If you're watching the stream, comment for me. Okay, remember I just talked about head, heart, and gut. Head people need all the numbers. Heart people need to They're emotional decision makers. They need to visualize things. They really need to like whoever they're working with in order to say yes. And gut people are, they're quick to the decision. And typically, and here's some things too to think about how to analyze this. I know when I start talking about this, people oftentimes kind of already have their own favorite personality test. They really like DISC, they really like PI, they really like whatever, this and that and the other. So frankly, I feel like I get glazed over eyes a lot of times because they're like, oh, that's just another personality test, and I already have my favorite. I want you guys to think about this for a second. I don't care about the DISC test. I don't care about the PI test for this context. I think they're great. But when I'm talking in a negotiation, I don't care how you manage your staff in a time of stress versus how you manage your relationships in a time of non-stress. I don't care about all these other things that PI and DISC and all these other things are meant to try and give you this full. I care what makes you say yes or no to something. So let's boil it down to the simplest form, right? Head, heart, and gut makes you say yes and no. So I want you to tell me, are you a head person, a gut person, or a heart person? And the other side of things too is field testing a DISC personality or a PI personality is very tough. Field testing the head, heart, and gut is very simple. You look for certain key phrases that people are going to say and how they kind of steer the conversation. It's very easy to know what they are. The gut person could be hard to figure out because they're going to present as head or heart. But here's the other thing I want you guys to comment on. How many of you, and I want you to tell me, how many of you watching have run into this situation, okay? Daniel, maybe you've run into this too. How many of you run into a situation where you get asked a question by your seller? You're 15% into the way of answering the question. You're really just kind of setting up the answer, and they change the topic, and you spend the next 30 minutes stressed of how in the world am I going to pull this conversation back to actually answer the question that they asked, because they asked me the question. Of course, they need to know the answer, and I didn't even get a chance to give them the answer. How am I going to pull this back and finish my answer with them, right? Who's dealt with that? Daniel, have you dealt with that?
I am embarrassingly going to say it happens a lot. Like the seller, you start getting down that path and they pull you right back off of it. And you're like, no, get back here.
And so what'll happen is it's okay to pull it back once, twice, because people have ADD. But if they're doing that, guess what? They're probably a gut person. And gut people don't care what the answer is. They care that you have an answer. Okay, I want you to really let that sit. Gut people don't care what the answer is. They care that there's an answer. Gut people don't need to like you. They need to feel like they like you, right? A heart person needs to like you. A head person needs to have the answer. A gut person needs to know that an answer exists and that you have it, because then they don't have to worry about it. A gut person needs to feel like they like you. I don't know what it is about this guy, but yeah, he's pretty cool. Gut people are typically very much the life of the party, very much ADD, kind of changing topics, that kind of thing. So are you a head, a heart, or a gut? Understanding the field testing aspect of this, and the fact that, like Daniel just said, hey, this is a heart pitch. I'm going to pull up a slide during his next one that's going to help you understand why it's so important for you to not get that wrong. Another really good heart pitch. Okay, so we've got a couple of head people. Angel says he's a head person. Let's see. I've started a watch party over here. I got to get back to the other
head and his wife was a heart.
Excellent. So all you head people, listen to this, right? Here's another pitch for you guys to use. This is a heart person pitch. This is when you run into a situation where somebody is like really emotionally attached to this property. And so I've used this a lot of times and it works great, but do not use this on a head person. What you're going to say is something along the lines of this. Look, hey, here's the thing is this house is obviously it's obviously it's livable. You're living here. It's just fine. And you've had great memories in this home, haven't you? I mean, you've lived here for 35 years, but she needs some love. And that's what I do is I come in, I'm going to, bring this thing back up to its bright and shining, best it's ever looked in the last 40 years condition, so that a new family can move in and create their memories in this house for the next 25, 10, whatever amount of years. It's time for both of you guys to move on. You've got some reasons that means that it's time for you to kind of move on to your next stage, and it's time for this house to get the love that it needs and to move on to its next stage. Okay, and then I will probably follow it up with, like, one of the best examples I have of this was a lady that I was working with. She was the sweetest woman, lived in this house since it was built new 40 years ago. It was time for her to go to a retirement home, so she was looking for options to sell. And so I gave that pitch there, and then I started talking about what I was going to do with the house, right? And I gave her an opportunity to buy in on that. So we started talking about it, and I gave that, and then I said, look, I'm going to come in here. I'm probably going to put the laminate luxury vinyl planks in here. Have you seen those? Have you ever taken a look at that? And they're either like yes or no or whatever. She, in this case, was like no, and I was like, look, it's been crazy, the technology that's come out. Like, you don't have to spend all the crazy money on hardwoods. Have you ever looked at like replacing this with hardwoods and what that would cost? And she's like, oh my gosh, I've wanted to do hardwoods for so long, and I just wasn't able to afford doing that. And I was like, I totally get it. They're expensive. This luxury vinyl plank is really good. It looks great. It's not nearly as expensive. It's totally waterproof. You can replace it plank by plank if something goes wrong on it. And it looks really good. So I'm probably going to do something like that in here. And then like that wall that separates out the kitchen from this living room. Had you ever thought about taking that wall down so that like if you're cooking in the kitchen, you'd be able to talk to the family in this room? She's like, I have wanted that for years. That I've thought about that because I'd have people over, because she's, heart people are going to mention their family. They will mention something. They had a sister living with them. They're going to go stay with some family. Their daughter's taking care of them. Heart people mention their family. So she had talked about hosting events with family. And that just connected with her. So now she had buy-in. Well, guess what? She got up. She went into the other room. She had samples of carpet, samples of woods, things that she would do. And I liked some of her ideas. And we had that conversation. So now she knew that this house that she cared so much about was being put in good hands, right? A heart person wants to know that this house that they love is being put into good hands. Now, that pitch that I just gave, it's time for both parties to move on. This house has been wonderful for you for 40 years, but now it's time for somebody like me to come in and give her the love that she deserves and fix it up to be the most beautiful she's been in 40 years and let another family move in and start their 5 or 10 or 20, 30 years worth of memories in it, right? How sleazy does that feel as a head person? If you're a head decision maker, how does that sit for you? Right, Daniel, if you're head, and actually I'd be curious even on you, because you are, like I said, you're one of the rarest people I've met for many different reasons, but one of them being like, you're actually pretty even head, heart, and gut. That's very rare. It's usually very high in one decision center, pretty high in another decision center, and super low in the third one, right? But you're pretty even on them. How would something like that sit if I were to have pitched that to you?
That would be really annoying for me because none of that really mattered to me very much. So it would get kind of annoying. And one of the things that I think that you mentioned is my blend of all three. I have to openly admit I'm a pretty heavy heart person, and I've got a really strong gut component to that. But since I'm aware of my thought process on that side, I have trained myself over years to have a very solid logic path built into my head because I will let my heart make bad decisions. So I always filter my heart through a logic path, which blends in the headpiece to it as well.
I love that. Yeah. And I'm glad, because that is part of being a good business owner, is that you assess what is a possible threat to your business and like a SWOT analysis. And that was one. And so you have worked that, right? You figured out the way on that. But here's the thing. I want you guys to understand something. When we're talking about, quote unquote, the pitch, right? I've used that word, the pitch. I don't want that to have any kind of negative connotation on it to you, because it's absolutely not. We just have to understand how to talk to people. I also don't want it to come off as though we're doing any of these things in a manipulative manner. Yes, we absolutely understand how psychology works. We absolutely understand what our most likely path to a yes is, but we're giving our sellers an offer that is good for them, right? I am not ever going to use this to like, look, if we can pay what we can pay, and whatever it makes sense for your business is what makes sense for your business, but don't try and get one over on somebody. Just always be super. I tell my sellers exactly what I'm going to sell it for. I literally say exactly. I will say a range. I'll say, look, I think once this is fixed up, it's going to be selling for the low mids or the low 60s or the 160s, the mid 160s or the high 160s, right? I'll put a range of one of those three, but I'm very honest with those are my actual comps. And frankly, that is part of another tip that I want to give you here in the negotiating is do stuff like that. Because here's the thing, if you're running a good business and you're just confident with your numbers, there's no reason. I hate wholesalers that will say, well, what do you think the house is worth? And they say 120, and you can sell it for 150, and you're like, sweet, now I get to negotiate off of 120 because that's what they think it's worth. I think that's real squirrely. I think that's super shady. I will say, wow, that's crazy. You'd go with 120. I'll tell you what, I've got some good news for you. I actually, when I run the values on this, I think that when it's fixed up, I can sell it for the low 150s. That's what I'm running off of. But I've got to have a discount built in for me to make money, because at the end of the day, and here's a script I want you to write down. I want you to say, at the end of the day, this is how I make my money. This is how this is how I feed my family. This is how I put food on the table at the end of the day, right? So I'm in it because this is a business for me. But I'm really glad, and then you kind of finish it up, and I'm really glad that I'm able to make money in such a way that's helping you out in a situation that you need help out of. And I'm going to help a buyer who needs help, right? Like, it's kind of a win-win-win deal. That is another very important part that is actually one of the cornerstones of negotiating, in my opinion, is introducing that idea very early. I know I kind of grazed into it, but again, we're trying to shotgun things out here. That idea to me is one of the cornerstones of negotiating, because at early on, some point in time within the first 20 minutes of talking to this person, you've got to introduce to them, you're here because it makes money. Because what that's going to do is at the end, when they need, or they start asking for stuff, you get to shut down that ask very simply just by saying, I'm so sorry, that just doesn't make business sense for me. But what if we did this? And then you don't get into that back and forth that we've all been in, where they're like, I want 150. And you're like, I can give you 130. And they're like, but I need 150. And you're like, I can give you 130. Goes back and forth. Well, if you're able to say 150 just doesn't make business sense for me, and it connects back to the dots of who they already know you are, they like you, they just understand you're going to make good business decisions, you get to say, I'm sorry, that just doesn't make business sense for me, and it shuts it down, and you move forward and you move on. But to land this plane of where I was going with the we're not manipulating here, we're not offering something that's not good for them, but we are figuring out how to speak to them. I actually want you, if you had that impression, I want you to think of it, because the truth of the matter is it's actually the exact opposite here, okay? By us understanding if this person's a head, heart, or gut, by us understanding through open-ended questions how this person makes decisions and moving forward to speak into a language that makes sense to them, that is the ultimate show of respect. Because it's so disrespectful for us to sit in front of somebody who makes decisions with their heart and say, yeah, but I make decisions with my head and mine is better. So I'm going to give you all the numbers of how we're going to buy this house. And I'm going to make sure that you know, and you care exactly about the interest and all the, the numbers weighted and blah, 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 because that's how you make decisions. That's super disrespectful to how they make decisions. They're a grown human. They get to make decisions the way they want to make decisions. You need to respect that. And you need to learn that about the person that's across from you. It's kind of like a love language. And so if they speak Spanish, don't try to buy their house by speaking English. They're both based in Latin, but it's a different language, right? So if they're a heart person and you're a head person, it's not wrong for you to give a heart pitch to that person, even though that would be the worst pitch in the world for you to receive. It's actually the most respectful thing you can do to shift your pitch into something that matters to them, because they need to feel comfortable with moving forward. Does that make sense, Daniel? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're going to be doing this, the key thing that I think that you should definitely be writing down and taking away from this conversation that we're having here today is understanding that you've got essentially three personality types that you're going to run into. You're going to have a head, a heart, and a gut, and all three have a specific way that they're going to make their decisions. And you're not being manipulative by speaking to them in a way that allows them to make a decision, but you need to speak with them in such a way that it makes sense to them. Like, you've got somebody that is super on the emotional side and they make their decisions with their heart, and all you were doing the entire time you were there is speaking about the fine details of the numbers and the transaction and everything. That person is not going to connect with you and want to talk with you, because you're speaking a bunch of stuff that they don't care about, and it really gets kind of annoying with them. So by early on determining what type of person you're speaking with, it will drastically change how you have this conversation with them in such a way that they feel comfortable in making a decision with you. That is not manipulative. That is just being smart. You've got to understand that you've got different types of people and different ways to communicate with them. One of the key things that I personally like, and if we're good with segueing into a different one, Grant, I'll take us into
Actually,
that.
Let me do this.
Okay.
Can I stop it real quick? I do want to segue, but I do also want to show this one slide, because I did pull it up before we get back into the shotgun. So here's what I want to show you guys. Oh, it helps if I... Wait, what? It should be showing you that. Okay, well, maybe I'll show it to you in just a second then. Hold on, I think. Here we go. All right, here's what I wanted to show you guys. All right, Daniel, if you could make that the large screen for you. I want you guys screenshot this, hold this out, and study this, okay? The only pitch, we're going to say that you're the person on the left and your seller's the person on the right. If you are a head person, giving a head pitch that is only going to work on a head person, right? You see the green lines going across. Head works on head, heart works on heart, gut works on gut. If you give a head pitch to a heart person, you're a jerk because you're not caring about them and you're not listening to them. If you give a head pitch to a gut person, you're boring. Gut people are ready to make the decision and move on. And if you are so dead set on making sure that every number in the world is put in front of them, you're going to bore the crud out of them and they don't want to work with you. I already showed you the heart pitch to a head person comes off as sleazy. The heart pitch to a gut person is gag worthy. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of listening to this person talk about how much they love their daughter. I get it. I love my daughter too. Can we please move on? Gut pitch to a heart person is a jerk, right? Here's a literal gut pitch that I've used before. I have literally used the pitch of, oops, that's not what I meant to do. I've literally used the pitch on a gut person of, look, right? You wouldn't have called me if you didn't already know that you needed to sell this house. Obviously, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. I've been here before. There's no sense in you wasting the time of us going through these like formalities of back and forth. You know that this is the right decision. So why don't we just move on with it and let's do this thing, right? And they signed and they loved it and they made a bunch of money off of it. And my negotiation was super short. That would drive a head person crazy. You would be the biggest idiot in the world if you tried to pitch that to a head person. They're like, whoa, what did you just say? You just told me that I know that you're the right choice. So let's move forward and do this. Yeah, have a nice day. I'll see you later, right? So you've got to really internalize this graph. Take a picture of it, screenshot it, however you might want to do that, and look at that. But make sure that you're always talking. You are speaking their language. Okay, so now we can move on, but I thought that would be a good, a valuable thing to show.
Yeah, that's a great slide. I certainly wouldn't have been able to come up with that one myself, so I like that. That's pretty cool. So on my side, like here's one that I like doing earlier on in the conversation, and I'll do this with any of the three. And normally what it is a short open-ended question, and I drive it in home hard, and I just ask a straightforward question. I was like, what do I need to do to earn your business? And I'll say it just like that. What do I need to do to earn your business? What do I have to do to get this transaction closed and make you feel comfortable in doing business with me? And what I try and do with that question is get the seller to open up and give me exactly what they want to hear to make this transaction move forward. And then once I've got a strong understanding of, because when they start responding with their answers, you're going to pick up on the things that matter the most to them. And it may not always be the money aspect of things. Sometimes they'll respond like, if you can help me figure out where I'm going to move, we can make this happen. That had nothing to do with money, but you can tell right then and there, that is what was stopping them from making a decision because they were not aware of where they were going to move to. And while you may have not even brought that up in the conversation yet, that was the piece that was stopping them from making a decision. So I always like to ask, what do I have to do to earn your business today? What's stopping you from moving forward? Those two types of questions, I'll kind of interlace them together. It's like, A, I want to earn your business. How do I do that? And B, what is stopping you from moving forward with me today? If I ask both of those simultaneously back to back in that fashion, they will normally tell me the objections that they're having that they may have not voiced in the past because I have opened up the door and allowed them to say it. And right then and there, I'm able to get that conversation moving forward and with those details, figure out exactly what it was that was stopping them from making the decision and then tailor my conversation from that point moving forward to address those concerns.
Yeah, and I think that's a great one for people to pay attention to. Absolutely. I actually have another one that is very similar to that, which is, I think we've all been in this position where, the seller is basically standing up and showing you the door, right? Like everything's done. You didn't get the contract, right? I have a way to get out of that situation that has worked very well for me. And as a matter of fact, I even went live one time from my car during this, maybe a year or two ago when I was on appointment. We buy remotely nowadays, but so here's the thing. They're showing you the door. You don't have the contract. Very similar to him, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it off with a little bit of a joke, right? If you smile or if you get them laughing, you win, right? Getting a seller laughing, that is kind of the first step. If you go back to our, we did what was that even labeled when we went over my phone call? It was something along the lines of real life phone call analysis or something like that.
Something like that.
We did Grant Teach Me Something on a few weeks ago. But I was even referring to it there. Get them laughing. That's when you can start going into something because now you've got that connection. So what I'll say, look, here's the deal. I hate being a used car salesman. just as much as you hate talking to used car salesmen. But I've been in the business long enough that I know that if I actually leave and if I actually walk out that door right now without a signed contract, the likelihood that you actually call me back tomorrow like you said you would falls through the floor. It just, historically speaking, this doesn't really happen. So for my used car salesman pitch, what's it going to take for us to get a signed contract today? Right? And they kind of giggle, and then they give you something, right? They will always give you something. They're going to say, well, this or that or the other, right? And then if you can solve that problem, you get the contract. That's a very high converting deal for me, okay? So, and if you solve that problem and they still don't say yes, then you have to ask more discovery questions. Well, a second ago you said if I solved this, that was it. But now we're still not ready to go. And then you can kind of, again, like what Daniel was talking about, what's it going to take? What do we need to do here, right? It's okay to be aggressive as long as you were being respectful during that aggression, respectful to their boundaries, respectful to them. Because here's the thing is that if you just leave and you're like, okay, I'll see you later. Thanks. Call me back. And I'm the guy with the next appointment. I don't leave without a contract. So you're not getting a call back, right? You have a chance to get that contract during the conversation, and you have no control over what happens when you're not there. So it's very important that you try to prepare them that this is a contracting appointment, right? So very similar, Daniel, to what you were just saying. What's another one? Do you have another one that you like falling back to?
So one that I always go back to, and I mentioned earlier, kind of like, here's how I work with a head.
Did I lose you? We still here?
I'm here. You're here.
Where
I'm
are
here.
Am I getting a text from? Nope. Daniel.
I'm pretty sure I'm here.
You there?
All right. I'm going to go ahead and mute him until he hears me back. So on my side, like whenever I am working with a head person, I kind of
So I'm going to assume that we're still live, and I'm going to start on
Hold on.
one of the phrases that I really like.
Let me see if I can figure out what's going on with Grant.
Like I was mentioning, I went live with from my car.
Hey, Grant.
There is also going to be a
side.
time where you run into, and actually I'm going to hit live on this to see if we're still going here.
I'm here. Let me see if I can help Grant out and figure out what's going on.
I just want
here.
to make sure because I'm not getting any audio.
How do I talk to Grant?
Oh my goodness, why is this doing that?
Let me see if I can figure out what's going on with Grant here.
Sorry, I got you now, Daniel. Sorry.
Okay, are you there?
Yeah, it was my end. Something's going on with my volume here. I don't know what the deal is.
All right. Well, now that we got him back, I'll finish the conversation that got started. So earlier, I kind of talked with you about how I would approach a head person to get the conversation going about numbers. I use a completely different approach when I'm dealing with a head person. A head person is a little more difficult for me to close with because I'm just not as good with the head people. But one of the things that has helped me out extremely is whenever I approach a head person, I always have my laptop with me, and I have spreadsheets, and I have pre-built spreadsheets, and I have what's called a seller net sheet. And I use that seller net sheet to go through with the head person from beginning to end on the house, because what I find very often when I'm dealing with a head person is they drastically miscalculate the estimated repair costs of the home. You know, they start saying, okay, well, you know, this 2,400 square foot house built in 1970 that's never been updated is going to take $12,000 to repair. And whenever I come to a head person, you can't just say no. You can't just say, no, it's going to take $29,000 to get this fixed, or it's going to take $44,000. That just does not work. They want to see facts and data to prove that, because they already have done all of their research 24 years ago that told them $12,000 is what it's going to take to fix this house. So what I'll do is I'll sit down with a net sheet, and I'll sit down and even like a repair analysis. And I'm like, okay, like we're talking about $12,000 here, but let's take a look at some of this stuff. If I look at the homes nearby, and I'll pull open my computer and I'll start looking at nearby homes that have sold in a remodeled condition, and I'll be like, hey, let's take a look at these floors. These are all like at the very least a click laminate hardwood floor. And you know what? Let's take a look real fast on Home Depot. How much does something like that cost? So I'm right there in front of them. I'm not doing anything hocus pocus. They can see exactly what's going on. I'm like, a simple click laminate that looks similar to what's in these other homes is averaging around $2 to $3 a foot. So if we sit right in the middle at $250 a foot, and let's say 70% of this house comes in at that $250 a foot range, just for the flooring alone, we're looking at $6,500. So if we're looking at $6,500 just on the floor, let's take a look at this kitchen. We've got brand new cabinets, we've got granite, we've got all this stuff. And what I'll do is I'll ask the seller to say, how much do you think that granite's going to cost? Sometimes their number's a little high, sometimes their number's a little low. I don't argue with them. I put it down, and once I get all of the numbers in, then I'll start breaking the numbers down. Like if they were really low on the granite, I'll come in and I'll be like, or if they're really high on the flooring or something like that, I'll come in there and I'll try and get them to come back to reality as to what it's actually going to cost. And then I'll start showing them through research on the computer real quick that, hey, while you think it's going to take $12,000 to repair this house, just in the first 4 lines, we've came to the conclusion that we're looking at least $17,000 just in material. So I'll go through and I'll look at it like that, and then I'll break down the costs of a real estate agent, the holding costs, any concessions, closing costs, and then I'll start pulling it through, and then I'll start showing the seller, hey, this is why I'm offering what I'm offering. Like right now, while you're seeing that, you know what, that you're going to make $80,000. Well, no, I'm not going to make $80,000 because, you know, my repair budget's $35,000 more than yours. And then my holding costs, closing costs, and everything else in between means I'm going to net $14,000 on this house. And then when you take into consideration my business expenses and everything else, you know, the seller is able to start realizing that while he thought there was a big spread there and I was going to be making a ton of money, the actual truth is that whenever I net out of the back of this, I'm looking at $12,000 before I even include my office expenses. So I've got to do 3 of these deals this month to go positive. The seller starts seeing that, realizing that, and it starts becoming a lot easier for me to close.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have another way to handle that situation that addresses the same issue, but in some similarities and some differences, right? The similarity that I definitely share with that is I definitely take my laptop. Now, like I said, nowadays we're 100% remote, but you know, when going on appointments, I think most people are going on appointments. I would take my laptop. That's actually one of the reasons. So I bought this iPad Pro. It's the big one because it's the size of a sheet of paper. So we can help, you know, they can sign contracts on it and it feels like a piece of paper, and that way you can email it to them. Because the other thing that stinks is, I'm sure you've run into this, they want a copy of the contract. So now you got to go find a FedEx office that's close and get contracts and blah, 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 blah. So that takes care of that. But definitely got the one with the cell phone or the cell card chip in it, the SIM card, because I would do just that. I would pull up Propelio in front of them. And this is what's really important about doing this with a head person, in my opinion, is explain to them that the only way to truly know the values of a house is to look at what's sold on the MLS. That everything else, Trulia, Zillow, all those things are just using algorithms to take a guess. But they don't always, especially like in Texas, a non-disclosure state, you have to have MLS access to actually know what things are selling for. And guess what Propelio gives you? True actual MLS access. So part of being a good negotiator is being a teacher. Negotiations are education at all times. You are teaching them how to treat you. You are teaching them what their best option is. You are teaching them. Find ways to teach them. This is an awesome opportunity to teach them how valuations work, so you can pull up Propelio in front of them. Put their address in front of them, even if it's already in there. Even if you already had comped it out yourself. You want to start with a fresh, empty slate. Put their address in, let it show you all the comps around, and then teach them, look, here's the thing. We have to compare 3-bedroom houses to 3-bedroom houses. We have to compare 2-bathroom houses to 2-bathroom houses. Yours is a 3-2. Yes, you're right. That house up the street from you did sell for whatever, 210. But it was a 5-bedroom, 3-bath. Yours is a 3-2. We can only use 3-2s. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put 3-bed and 3-bed, and I'm going to put 2-bath and 2-bath into how, you know, Propelio on the right-hand side, it's got like the filters, and you hit search, and then it takes a bunch of things away, right? You're teaching them how you actually arrive at comps using third-party data that you are manipulating in front of them with logic, so that they know you're not just presenting them with the lowest house that sold in the market and saying, this is what I think your house is for. Show them why you think their house is worth what it's worth, right? I do that. It's another big reasons why I go back to saying, like, yeah, absolutely. Tell them what you think you're going to sell it for. Because if you're doing business right and you're talking to a head person, like what Daniel just said, you can tell them exactly why you have to buy it at the rates you have to buy it. Everybody understands that you need to make money in this business. They're just worried about getting one over on them. So if you're showing them, now I'm not trying to make $80,000 and give you 40. I'm trying to make some money and I'm trying to give you some money, right? That works. That helps. So use that. As a segue there, if you guys are not users of Propelio, This is just one of the 6 trillion reasons why you should be a user of Propelio. Being able to pull up and show comps in front of your seller is a big deal that has gotten me houses to do that in front of the seller, right? And so having that mobile ability, I'll tell you, I let my MLS access lapse. I had MLS access. I don't anymore. I don't do that annual because Propelio's UI, the user interface, is just so far legs and above what MLS was even offering, especially on the mobile. So look into that. They do your websites, they'll do comps, they do lead lists. You can get 150,000 leads a day through Propelio. It's insane. The price that you pay for it is nothing compared to what you're getting. So check out Propelio.com if you're not already a user on there. And I do want to give a quick shout out to those of you like Juan and We Buy Houses Dallas, Texas, and Abimelech and Corey who shared the live streams. Really appreciate that. This is information that we feel very strongly that people need to get to yeses and to help their career build. So we appreciate you doing that. And all the kind comments. Geraldo saying, I freaking love Propelio. Gabe saying, always great info from Grant and Daniel. The fire emojis, we love those coming in from Kip. So we do love the interaction. We do love the questions. We do want to help you guys out with that. So share, check out Propelio, that kind of thing. So maybe we move into another one. Okay. So Daniel, do you have any other ones that you have in your, what's not crib? What's what I'm looking for?
What's in the toolbox?
Where a horse is. Yeah. Toolbox. There you go.
What's in the toolbox? So what are some of the ones I've done? Let's see here.
I've got another one.
Okay.
You know, I'll put another one out while you're thinking of one. The sister to the one that I gave earlier, where I was talking about, the used car salesman. The sister to that is when you're in that situation that we've all faced. And again, I'm going to flip over to the comments here so that I can see your guys' response. I want to see who's faced this situation. When you're in that situation. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. Let me finish up on the other piece of that problem where people argue with your valuations of the rehabs. I fixed that problem. I haven't had a single person fight me on rehab costs once I started doing this. Here's what every other wholesaler does that walks into this person's house. They say, hey, seller, come over here. Hey, come here. No, you're gonna have to get really close. Come over here. No, even closer. Come. Look, yeah, I know. I just need you to stand right next to me. I know it's COVID. I'll move out of the way, but look right there. You see that little dent? You're gonna have to get close. You see that little dent in your wall? That's $15,000 right there. I'm gonna have to take that off of your. That's $15,000 right there. That's a big deal, right? That's what everybody else does. What you're going to do is separate yourself out from them. What you're going to do is you're going to walk around the house in a good attitude, and no matter what you see, nothing is a big deal. And you're going to tell them, it's not a big deal. I get that stuff done for cheap. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Or you can react and be like, oh my gosh, the wall is falling off. Literally, that's crazy. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I've got all the guys for that. We get that stuff done for cheap. And you write it down on your deal. But it's always, don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. I've got the people for that. We get that stuff done for cheap. It's a posturing phrase that allows them to know, hey, this is somebody that does enough volume that they know exactly who to talk to for that. I'm going to have to go to Google and hope that I find somebody. But this guy already has somebody in his phone that he's going to call. He already knows what the price is going to be. And he's telling me that he gets it done for cheap, which means, A, he knows what it should be priced at, and he does enough volume that he's getting a discount on this. Once I started saying that, I never again had a single person fight me on my rehab budget when we got to the end and I said, hey, it's going to be about 30 grand for me to get everything. And I'm going to put a little bit of an emphasis on me when I say that, right? It's going to be 30 grand for me to get everything done on this house that needs to be done, which means that I'm going to need to come in at so-and-so, so-and-so. Because it's persuasion, as Robert Cialdini would say, right? We've already told them the entire walkthrough that we get stuff done for cheap. So when we say our price at the end, they're like, well, I guess that's the cheap price, right? Because we're emphasizing for me to get this done, it's going to cost about blank, which they're like, well, why did they emphasize that? It's because we're separating us from you. It would cost you more to do this. I, with all of my volume discounts and experience, I'm going to get it done for this. And that means I need to buy it for that, right? Because before I started doing that, invariably you'd have my cousin Jimmy said that he'd come over here, $1,800, he fix the whole dang thing up, $1,800. You tell me it's gonna be $25,000. I get my cousin Jimmy, I had to do it for you. We stop getting that. Once you start saying I get that for cheap, they start trusting the numbers whenever you come in at the end. So those are the two different ways that I would approach that same situation. So I do have one in the back ready to go, but. Daniel, did you think of anything else that you've liked, or do you want me to just kind of move on to this and then land the plane?
I've got one more, and then let's land the plane. And then I did have a question come in from someone in the group that I think you could help out with for sure. So
Excellent.
one of the last ones I like to do, once I have gone through with the seller and I have confirmed that the seller has multiple offers coming in, they're speaking with multiple people. A key thing that I always like to say is, what are some of the things that you are liking about the other offers you have received? I always like to ask that question, and that gets the seller to start talking about what their conversations have been like with other people, what the other people are offering them, and what it is that they like about everyone else's. Because now they're just telling me, okay, well, you know what, John over there offered me X, Y, Z. Blank, blank, blank offered me this, this, and this. And but what I'm really liking about this other person's offer is that they're giving me a week to stay in the house after we close to get everything done. Once you ask that question, many times I've had sellers just open up and be like, well, the thing that I like the most about this other offer is X, Y, Z. And if I can get them to start telling me these things, then I know how to tailor my offer to be more appealing to them. And if I don't ask that question, many times it's not going to just be brought up. So I always like to ask, what are some of the main things that you like about the other offers you've received so far? And then boom, I'll just let them open up and start talking.
Love that. That's great. Yeah, because again, if somebody else gave them a creative offer that you hadn't thought about doing and they like that, well, now you get to steal that thought process. That's great. That's a good one. All right, my last one that I'll throw out there is the sister to the used car salesman, which has been another high converter for me. I really like this one a lot. I want to know, again, comment to me if you've finished or if you've hit this situation before in one of your appointments where you're talking typically to a husband and wife and you're across the table from them. You've given them all the information that they need really to make a decision. But you kind of see the side eyes that they're giving each other, and it always ends up with, okay, well, thank you so much for coming out. We're going to talk about this, or thanks for coming out. We'll call you back tomorrow. Have a good day. Blah 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 blah. Right? How many of you have hit that situation in one of your your appointments?
Oh yes.
So the way around that, and this one is great. Okay, the way around that is you start to notice the signs of them kind of eyeballing each other off to the side and seeing, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Don't let them get to the opportunity for one of them to be brave enough and say, well, thanks for coming out. As soon as you notice those signs and as soon as you feel like you've given enough information, just be like, say this. Okay, here's the thing, guys. I think that you guys have enough information in front of you to understand that this is a good offer, but you guys need a minute to talk it over. And frankly, you need a minute to talk it over when I'm not around because you need to talk about me. You got to figure out that you want to work with me. So I have enough work to last me for 6 weeks, right? And I've got my computer here with me. So I'm going to go just hang out in my car. Don't think about me. Don't worry about me at all. But you guys need a moment to talk it over with yourselves. I'm going to go hang out in my car. I'm going to go get some work done out there. When you guys are ready to move forward with this contract, just come out, wave me in, and we'll finish things out from there, okay? But take your time, and I'll go sit out there, right? And so you go and you sit in the car. And you literally, well, the funny thing is you're never going to have to sit out there for 10 or 15 minutes more than 10 or 15 minutes. And Daniel, did you pick up on any of the subtle language that I used in certainty?
I certainly did. I liked how you said when you decide to move forward with this, come out there and wave me in. You said something along the lines of a positive reinforcement of saying when you're ready to move forward with this, or when it didn't give them the option of saying we're not going to do this. It's like when you're ready to get this contract signed, come out here and get me. You said something along those lines.
Yep, you're absolutely right. That is exactly right. So there's two things I did. That one was the main one. The second one that's much more minor but still was there is that I say, look, you need a moment to talk about me because you got to feel comfortable moving forward with me, right? So we're still positively reinforcing your conversation. The topic of this conversation is for both of you to say yes to each other before you say yes to me, right? That's what you need. So when we say, whenever you're ready to move forward with this contract, just wave me in, and then we'll come in here and get things finished up. Now, the fact that you're waiting out in your car, and you've told them, reinforced over and over again, you got plenty, don't worry about me. I got plenty of stuff to do, don't worry about. But there's a social contract that they understand. They don't want to have this guy just waiting in the car for the next 6 hours. So you are shortcutting their thought processes to help them have the conversation. Like there was this old character on Saturday Night Live, I think it was Mike Myers, and he's like, Dave and Klimt, like talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Rhode Island is neither a road nor an island. And then he would go on, right? Like you're taking care of that first part of their conversation where they would have said, well, what do you think? I don't know. Do you like this guy? Do you want to move forward? What do you want to talk about during this time? And you're saying, here's the topic of the conversation. Both of you need to say yes to each other, and then you need to wave me in. So you shortcut in that line. And when you leave, I don't know what their conversation is because I'm not there, but I do know I've never had to wait more than 10 or 15 minutes. And I do know I've got about a 95% conversion rate on that situation, where they call me back in and we get a signed contract done right then and there within 10 or 15 minutes. And that's the one I went live for my car. And I told people, I was like, hey, I'm live. This is what I just did. They're about to wave me in and get the signed contract. This is how it went. Went back in, signed a contract, came back out, updated the live. Yep, got the signed contract. Here it is, right? It is that. I'm that confident in that technique that I was willing to do that as a live video and know that it was going to turn into a signed contract, right? So anyway, we've just thrown a lot at you today. We've given you a ton of tools, and I could talk for 6 weeks on different tools. I got pages and pages and pages of things like this that we can go off of. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. We'd like some feedback. Let us know how you felt about this. What I'd really like to know from everybody watching, we got a lot of folks watching here today. I really like you to know, what was something that stuck out to you today? What is something that really landed? Anytime I do any kind of learning, a book or listening to something, there's always that thing that's going to be easy for me to remember because I'm like, ooh, that one is good. That one is big. And I need to really remember that. So would you guys comment that? Because I want to know what's most impactful to you. You guys are the ones that matter. We want to know what you are getting value from in these kinds of things. So I appreciate you guys being here. Again, Propelio, check Propelio out. If you're not there already, they have a free trial. You got nothing to lose on it. And it is a just phenomenal piece of software that's going to help you get all of the software tools that you need to get going in this, right? So myself, I'm Grant Kemp, creativecashflow.com. I do education. If you like the way that I talk, if you like the way you talk, if you like the way that I talk, and you like how I teach things and the details in which we go into it, check me out, creativecashflow.com. There's a couple different layers that you can join in. We've had a few people join the Creative Executives group in this last week and a half. Super excited. We've got a phenomenal group of folks in that mastermind. And we got a ton of people in Seller Financing Essentials that I'd love to have you there. I'd love to share this information with you and get you guys up and running in this space. So check me out, creativecashflow.com. And right now I am running, because of the pandemic and because everybody is kind of in a cash crunch, we are running a 50% discount, which we've never done before, probably won't do again. But right now, if you do COVID 50, all uppercase or all lowercase, it can't be mixed, COVID 50, you'll get 50% off of the Seller Financing Essentials. So again, check that out, creativecashflow.com. Daniel, you have anything else that you wanted to throw in there?
Yeah, I'd love to. Like, one thing real quick is I do get quite a few people asking me, will I mentor, or who mentored me, and things of that nature. Grant Kemp, hands down, was definitely my creative finance mentor, the guy that really took me out of just the wholesaling rehab box and moved me into the creative offering structures. 110% hands down, my mentor on that side. Some of the things, though, that I do want to rewind back and touch base on is, when you were going through on multiple of these different pitches, I want to focus in on and speak on the language that you were using, because I don't know if everybody has been trained to tune in on this and pick up on this. You're using very confident language. You're not using iffy language. And what do I mean by that? And I want everybody in here to really bring this into your own thought process and mind. You're not saying things like, well, if we do business together, this is how it'll work. You say when we do business. There's a big difference between when and if. That's a big difference in the confidence of choices of words that you're using. When you go through and say, when I buy this house, not if I buy this house. When you go through and you say, just the choice of words that you are using are the indications of your confidence in this deal. And when you're having these conversations with seller, believe it or not, a lot of these people will pick up on the language that you use, and you want to use confident language because you don't want to come in there and sound iffy. A lot of these people are in a situation where they want certainty. That's why they are calling you, because they want to know that this deal is going to move forward. So use language that has a layer of certainty to it if you are confident in what you're saying. Like, don't go out there and tell somebody you're 110% going to buy their house if you're not certain you can do it. But if you know that you can do these types of things, use the language that conveys that. And that is one of the things that Grant has done, and done well, with the choice of words that he uses. So make sure that when you're on these conversations that you project the confidence that you have. So that moving forward, I did have one question come in that I'd like to see if I can get you to answer, Grant. And this is basically, what are some of the key things that you use to determine quickly Who's head, heart, and gut?
That's a good question. All right, here's what we're going to do is I'm actually going to share you some slides because this will help, and we'll just blow through these real quick because I actually have this open already as part of what I was bringing up earlier. So let me pull up where that is. Let me just go quickly through this for you guys, all right? So the head person needs all the details. You can never give the head person too much information. They're going to work based on logic, okay? Does this make sense for them? 1 + 1 is always 2 for a head person. They love numbers and they want the bottom line and they don't want to waste time. So the things that head people are going to say, they're going to keep steering the conversation back to the numbers, okay? They're going to become quickly disinterested when you start using emotional language. They don't care that by you buying their house, they're going to get to send their son Jimmy to a comfortable education path or whatever. What they care about is that this house is worth 175 to them and how close to that are you going to get, right? So don't use emotional language. You need cold, hard facts with head people. I really need to think this over. You may think as a head person thing, but it's not. It's not a head person thing. 1 + 1 is 2, always. So they don't need to think that over because they think logically. We'll get to who does use that here in a second. Heart people are emotional decisions who need to like you. Visualization is huge. You have to paint a picture of what their life will look like by selling to you, okay? Here's one of the great contracting tips that I can give on a heart person too is, look, I'm so sorry that you have I can't help that your sister is dealing drugs and is a terrible person and that your son has screwed off their life. I can't help all of those things, but what I can help is this particular situation with this house. I can buy this house. That's why I'm here. I'm gonna contract with you today so that tomorrow when you wake up, you can stretch and maybe all those other things are still going wrong, but you can feel comfortable that at least this situation is taken care of because yesterday Grant came over and signed a contract with you, right? Help them visualize what their life looks like by working with you. They love to imagine that house is animate. And I already gave you this pitch about like, hey, she needs some love. And that's what I do. Heart people are going to talk about memories in the home. They've probably mentioned their family several times. Either their sister's staying with them, they're going to go stay with their brother, they're helping their mom with this or that or the other. They will have mentioned their family. Head people don't mention their family. That's not a 100% rule, but I really need to think this over is actually a heart person phrase because I really need to think this over translates into I need some time to feel good about this decision. You don't need to think it over if you are a head person because 1 + 1 = 2. That's not a think it over situation. A heart person has to feel good about their decisions before they make those decisions. And that feel good is not based on logic. So that's why you need to understand what language they speak so that you can help understand what is going to make them feel good about working with you. And then you provide them with that information. And that will be what makes them say yes. And a gut person makes quick decisions. They need to feel like they like you. First impression is huge with gut people. Not that you don't put your best foot forward for everybody, but especially gut people need to have that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to hit that Leroy Jenkins moment if you play your cards right. Even if they present as a head or heart, you've got to feed that decision center hard enough until they say, all right, this person has the answers I was looking for. I don't have to know the rest of them. Let's do this. Gut people change the subject a lot. They're very ADD. They ask you a question, they move on to the next thing. A lot of times they're going to start out, like if they present as a head person, they're going to start off interested in their numbers, but then they kind of glaze over and you're wondering how you lost them because they asked you what the numbers are. You're giving it to them. How did I lose them, right? It's because they're a gut person. They don't really care. And they're interested that you can appeal to the heart, but they lose interest in your stories, right? You hear that they're a heart person, so you start telling a heart story and they lose interest and they glaze over. They're probably a gut person. They're bored with you now. They're typically extremely friendly, very outgoing. They're very confident, kind of life of the party type people. And so that's going to be some quick tips on how you can identify each of these 3 decision centers when you're in the field. Does that help point that out for you, Daniel, you think?
I truly believe so, because we had several people that took on to the head, heart, gut aspect of this and weren't quite certain how to apply that accurately. And I think that really brought it in. So for those that just saw that, rewind back through, watch that again, maybe take some notes on that. And then maybe just through your personal or professional life, when you're talking with people, start trying to just kind of be like, oh, okay, My best friend's a head person. Okay, and then you know what? My sister's a gut person. Well, you can kind of start learning to analyze people this way, and then just tailor even your personal conversations. Because every time you're having a conversation with somebody, you at some point in time you're negotiating. Like, no matter what it is, you're negotiating all day long, every day. You're trying to have these conversations with these people. So start bringing that into your personal life, and I appreciate you for bringing that to light, Grant. Is there a book that relates to that? I believe that you have one that you recommend.
Man, no, actually, I picked that particular thing. There might be a book that relates to it. Let me put it that way, but I don't know what it is. I actually picked that particular thought process up from a mortgage broker that was teaching on negotiations one time several years ago. And he brought up the head, heart, gut thing kind of in passing in this thing that I was at a seminar I was watching. And then I started paying attention to it in my negotiations. And the benefit that we have by doing the volume that we do is that we get to talk to a lot of people. And I'm very psychologically, like, I love psychology. And I love so that's what started me being like, hey, there might be something to this 3 decision center thing. And then we just really kind of like shifted it into this somewhat science of trying to figure out who these guys are, and have just seen massive results from that. So it may be based on a book, but it's really, that's kind of more of something. I stole the 3 things from that mortgage broker, and then we kind of developed the rest of it on the head, heart, gut stuff.
I really like that. I really do. So for everybody that watched today, I appreciate you dropping your comments. I've seen a lot of you guys over there on YouTube dropping your key takeaways. Facebook, you've been kind of lagging on me. Come on, Facebook guys. What were some of the key takeaways you took away from this? I think YouTube's got you beat today. Let's jump back on there, Facebook. But for everybody out there watching today, I want to give you all a solid thumbs up. Thank you for being a part of this. Appreciate you being on here. Let's go ahead and do some love here. If y'all are really appreciating what we got going on, make sure to show us some love. We're going to be landing this plane. Grant, do you have any final thoughts on this topic, or do you think we should follow this up next week? Because we had a lot of people asking for more of this negotiation type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to turn this into something where we reapproach it every so once in a while, I'm super happy to do that. Again, I think that this is the thing that I think is most impactful for everybody's business, and it's the most impactful for your life. My son's 2.5 years old, and I literally over this last few weeks have been dropping the idea into his head of, hey, I mean, literally he's 2.5 and I'm talking to him about like, hey, all you got to know is how to sell and how to influence. And then it doesn't matter what else you're good at, right? Like, it doesn't matter. As long as you can sell, you're going to be successful in life, whatever you're trying to do. And I think all it takes for anybody to understand that about me is hang out with me for a little bit, and then just hang out with my wife for a little bit. And when you realize how much better she could have done than me, then you can look back at this negotiation series and be like, dang, man, maybe Grant really knows what he's talking about here. Because it affects every piece of your life. If you know how to speak other people's language because you respect them enough to understand their worldview and to approach it like that. So I'd be happy to reapproach some negotiations on that. One thing that I do want to push out there is that there are a million people trying to get into the info space always, right? Because it's a shiny object and people get Facebook famous off of stuff. If you appreciate what we are doing by the type of education that we provide with the real life examples, with the real life anecdotes and all that kind of stuff, please help spread the word about Propelio and creativecashflow.com. I mean, that's kind of a trade. Like, we're giving you a bunch of stuff for free on this. And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to lord that over anybody by any means, because we're passionate about this and we want to do that. But just like we have a responsibility because we've got all this knowledge, we have a responsibility to give it to people where they can become more successful. Well, you know that we exist. So guess what? You have a responsibility to help your community get to a better plane. If we're willing to actually give the information out and give it to you, I know that it's very easy to fall into the category of, man, I don't want to give this resource up because then what's going to happen to my competition? If we're the ones with the actual information and we're happy to give it away, maybe you should take that as a clue as, guys, there's plenty of business for everybody. You don't need to be scared of giving it away. What you need to do is you need to build a community of people who are doing things the right way and can help build you up. And you do that by sharing the knowledge that we exist. Bring people in, share these videos, let people know about Propelio, let people know about creativecashflow.com. That is the biggest ask that I can give for you guys after we do something like this. So that's where I'm at. I love having you guys here. This has been a blast. I'll be happy to reapproach the negotiations on another time. And we're here every week. So tune in. Grant teaches me something every week at 11 on Wednesdays.
Well, guys, I appreciate you coming in. Grant, as always, thank you for coming in here and sharing that wonderful knowledge that you possess so much of. And for everybody out there watching, I appreciate you as well. I really love being a part of this. I'm fortunate enough to be able to pass on this type of information to y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of it. And at the end of the day, don't forget about Propelio.com. Propelio.com, we've been making some massive updates. So if you've ever checked it out in the past and you had some features that you were looking for, we have been making at least bi-weekly releases of new features. And we've got even more coming up here soon. We're adding twice as many filters for our lead lists. So you're going to get a lot more lead list filters coming out of there. Our Driving for Dollars app is being completely rebuilt right now to be Propelio in your pocket. Full Propelio features on the mobile app coming out very soon. So for everybody out there, if you need a Driving for Dollars application with direct mail and skip tracing, if you need websites, if you need professional emails for your business, Propelio.com can get you that, as well as national access to MLS comps and leads on over 144 million properties. And then you got the filters that you need to go in and drill down and get access to the types of deals that you're looking for. So check out Propelio.com. Don't forget to check out CreativeCashFlow.com. I know a lot of y'all ask for contracts. I know that Grant just released some white label contracts over there on CreativeCashFlow.com. So double check on that. Make sure you're getting over there, seeing what he has to offer. He does have that COVID-50 discount code going out there right now for half off. So everybody, much love.
And if I can throw one thing out there about the contracting thing that people don't understand, people get really frustrated with me for not doing like full walkthroughs of contracts, and I want everybody to be educated on that. That legally, there's a kind of a boundary that like I can't do that. I would love to give videos where I'm walking you through how to fill out a contract, filling out contracts for you. That is a very slippery slope. I've already taken the legal steps to provide white label sub-2 contracts, which is already a huge feat that took a lot of money and time to figure out the right way to do that. But I can't sit here and tell you how to fill out contracts there. So we'll figure out some kind of solutions for that. But I just wanted to give you the heads up. If you don't see us responding to that type of video, that's why, as I just really can't as it's set right here, but we'll figure something out there.
Well, awesome. I appreciate that. For everybody out there that is getting value out of this, help us out, likes, shares. Check us out on CreativeCashFlow.com. Check us out on Propelio.com. But I'm going to go ahead and come in and land the plane. I want to say thank you to Grant. I want to say thank you to everybody out there watching. And if y'all would like to say thank you back, double check Propelio.com, CreativeCashFlow.com, and I look forward to doing business with you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful, delightful, great evening, and have a good one, guys.